What's up, Bobcats? It is our end of the year 2024-2025 wrap up. My name is Sam Hyman. We got a packed show today, joined by Tanaya Stevens.
Hello.
And Mike Schulze is back in the building. Hello.
Hello.
And the one and only Julie Cromer, Director of Athletics, is here as well. Julie, we're so excited to break down and unpack the 2024-2025 season.
We are. Thank you, Sam. Welcome back to Schulze. This is the first time we've had an alum, non-staff member, as part of the year wrap up. Are you honored by that?
I'm very honored.
You should feel honored by that.
I really am. Thank you for the invite. Thank you everybody for the invite.
Shout out to our producer Jordan Bose for inviting you.
Yes.
You deserve to be here.
Yeah, you deserve to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you were a part of the 2024-2025
Some
season.
of it, yeah.
So we need
Majority
you
of it,
Yeah.
We need your perspective and insight. So
Of course.
we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to break things down into seasons. So we'll start with the fall season, then the spring, then the winter, and then we'll do some departmental updates as well. So we'll start by watching a video from our fall sports. Ready, set, go. Round of applause for our fall sports teams. So much growth, so much history during our fall season. And starting with football, I mean, just an incredible 2024 season. MAC champions, first time since 1968. It was cool to just witness it all unfold.
Yeah, 1960. Even I wasn't alive last time the Bobcats won the MAC football championship. You started with the highlight first, right out of the gate, Sam.
I mean, I just saw the one part where Parker Navarro threw to Coleman Owen at Ford Field in Detroit, and it froze for a second. So my mind just like froze, and I just was like stuck on that moment. It was a legendary moment, but it was a shutout win, like a blowout victory, and the season was just incredible in totality. I'm speechless. We're starting with football. We're starting there.
I think decisive is the word. Yeah, it was a decisive win, dominating win.
Dominating win. Actually, the largest margin of victory out of any MAC championship game as well.
On top of it was against Miami. So it was just a stack of just legendary stuff happening.
Yeah, it almost overloaded the senses, didn't it?
Yeah.
Schulze, how did you make it through that day?
Not
I think I know the answer to this.
I cried. I was pretty teary up in the press box. It was an incredible day. I mean, I think what made me so emotional was, I mean, the win, obviously, but I think it was the I can say this because I don't work here anymore.
Oh goodness!
Well, that's a great way to start this show.
I was so engaged with so many people that I went to school with, that went here, that were texting me throughout the game. And I remember my friend Todd texted me in the third quarter, and he was like, "It's happening!" Like he refused to believe it when they were up big, and then he finally at the end of the third quarter was like, "This is happening," and that's what made me like realize like there are so many people who care so deeply about winning the Mid-American Conference, and I was just to be able to share that moment over text message with so many different people made me just so happy, and then be able to be there and be a part of it was just it was overwhelming. It was incredible.
Yeah, decades, eras of alumni groups actually, and you know it's great exposure. It was great that it was the rivalry, but it is the power to bring everyone together. And the way that helps us feel, allows us to feel about our alma mater really is powerful. Sam, when did you know they were going to win? When did you feel it?
That's a great question.
I'm going to ask you next.
I honestly, That's a really good question. I think the loss to Miami was a motivator. I think that was a turning point and a wake up call. I didn't know they were gonna win after that game, but I thought it was a good wake up call that they needed to do something special.
Mhm.
I don't know.
There was a play, tight end Mason Wilson. He got in, did a little move there, and after that, the sideline went like crazy. And after that, I was like,
Mason Williams.
Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Mason Williams.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember that.
After that, it was just electric. But just seeing, like you said, seeing the crowd, besides the fact that the margin was so big, it still felt like a close game.
Yes.
Regardless. And it was just like, it could have been 60-2, 60-3, and it would have felt like we just won by.
I think that's the
7 points.
history, the weight of the moment in history. I think that our team did a really great job of keeping that in its place.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something mildly controversial in the first 5 minutes. If I were to answer my own question, I would say after the Toledo game.
Oh,
nice.
I just think that game and the way we ended that game, everything was clicking. And so easy to say now in hindsight, but that was the moment, I think, when I felt like this crew could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Almost regardless of who ended up in the championship game, they could do it. And then I would say, it became obvious earlier in the game that they were having a hard time dealing with some of the ways that our program grew from the time we played them before, Sam, that you mentioned, to what we were prepared to do there in Detroit. And I thought maybe in the second half they would come out, make some adjustments. They might be able to shut something down, and they just didn't. They couldn't, they couldn't. And so, and I mean that respectfully, we respect our opponents, but I actually first thought about it as we won the Toledo game.
I think too, like thinking about 2023 into 2024 with how many student athletes we lost to the portal, and to be able to retool and find pieces like a Trey Tice and a Coleman Owen. I mean, that's the first time we've had a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver in a season in school history. And for them to both come from the portal and to make an immediate impact right away, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard to ask an athlete to make more of what those guys, and they're not the only ones, but those guys made of their opportunity in such a short time. And if they were here today, they would say to you, Athens is home. Coleman said to me, I saw him after pro day. He was back for around the end of spring ball, and he was like, "This is my home. I'll bring my kids here."
Wow!
And what a compliment! And of course, they had a great season, and a historic season. But I think that's also a real sign of the culture of the program, and it's the highest compliment.
From your perspective, just watching the football team during the 2024 season, like. What was it like from your lens as an athletic director, just watching the 2024 season unfold?
Well, probably like it was for a lot of our fans. Like, you're learning a lot of new faces. You're wondering how we're going to pull this together. In camp, you could see pieces were there. I mean, the coaching staff, we were just talking about Coleman. The coaching staff said, "Hey, man, don't sleep on this guy. He might be as effective as any receiver we've ever had here." And of course, we had just come off a season where we had, a great receiver. And so we were all like, okay, that's the way to head into the season with, but they were right. And, so if you watched us over the season, there were gaps here and there that we had to fill. But I think the point you made earlier, Sam, is the point. We continue to get better every week. And I think if you can do that, that's been a trademark of our program over the last few decades. Some would say maybe there have been seasons along the way where it took us too long to get to that big finish at the end. And I understand that. But man, for the last 3 years, that hasn't been the case. And you could see they were going to continue to get better. I don't know if anybody called game after the Syracuse game or even early in the season. I don't know if anybody called championship, at that day, but those guys believed, and they just kept working and kept maturing and gelling as a team. And so what a great group of guys also to be the ones who finally did it. We've had great players, and, those guys who were there in Detroit this year are the ones who, will wear, they remind me, will wear the rings forever. They get the rings. But a lot of great players contributed to that and built the program that, they were there to represent in Detroit. But good group of guys for to come together like that.
Amazing group. And thinking about just, Parker Navarro, Parker Titsworth sticking around, his journey as a walk-on, Parker Titsworth being a walk-on at the beginning of his career. I mean, there's so many stories from so many different guys.
Yeah.
And then I like what you brought up, Schulze, earlier, and you added to it, Julie, just the community of Athens and just everybody coming together for this season and hearing stories from alums. Really, really cool stuff, I thought.
I'm just glad that when I turn a Ohio football game on every year, the announcers are not, the talking point is not going to be first time or
Still haven't won
since 1968.
Yes,
And I joke about that, but I do think there's got to be a weight off of the just collective program shoulders. I mean, it weighed on them, right? I mean, it weighed on every team who came close, didn't get there, and now going forward, it's almost like a rebirth.
I think it weighed on the fan base for sure. I mean, we have other stories of people who didn't quite believe it until the game was actually over or about to be over. But I don't know, Tanaya, as an athlete, how much of that weight do you carry? Or do you come in and say, well, we're the team that's different? And, you play as if every year is a new year. So I don't know how much it weighed on the team. What's your sense of that?
It definitely weighs on them because you hear people all the time, and we live in a world where you're living in social media and stuff like that. So that is always the target. But like you said as well, you come in with the idea that we know ourselves. And I think the difference between a good athlete and an amazing athlete is that you come in with confidence. And you could tell with all the athletes coming in there, and you talk to them now, they were confident in their coaching. They were confident in themselves and their team. And that it showed on the field as well. You didn't see any heads held down with anything that didn't work out. They came back out and got to it. So yeah, I think the confidence key was shown, and you don't have to really coach that. That's within them.
Well, I think it's a testament to beat a team that in the MAC championship that you lost to pretty handily early on, and the adjustments, and you want to talk about confidence and getting better, and the adjustments were made. I mean, they went to Miami, got beat 30-20, and then the turnaround and blow that team out in a high pressure situation just shows their growth and shows their confidence. So.
Yeah, and we've got to compliment the coaching staff as well. They are the ones who continue to develop this group, and they made some adjustments along the way. And yes, some of the senior players would tell you, they did that in a collaborative way. But, the coaching staff really did a great job continuing to improve that group throughout. And then all the way through the bowl game as well. When we talked with that group in between the championship game and going into the bowl game, I've told this story in other settings. The connectivity around that team was so apparent in the way they played. But to be in that team room with them the day after the championship and talk about the changes happening with the program and talking about the bowl game, those guys said to me, everyone's going to stay and go to the bowl game. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't going to hold them to that. It was an emotional day, and there were guys already who knew that they may be transferring to look for other playing time and whatever, as happens at the end of the year. And so, but they looked me in the eye and they said, we want this experience together. The team's going to stay together. We're going to all go to Orlando together. And they reminded me that for them, it started the year before. For that group, it started the year before in preparation for Myrtle Beach, and how, yes, they came together and won the game after so many players went in the transfer portal, but they didn't get to enjoy that experience together. And then there were a few others of the transfers who came in who spoke up and said, this is my only opportunity to experience a bowl. They transferred in from other parts of Division I, and they were like, this has been my dream since I was a kid. I want to do it, and I want to go with these guys, and wherever we go, we're gonna do this together. And I was so impressed by that. They did want to make history, which they did as well too, but really they wanted to do it together. And of course, that's easier to do after a big win, but it was an emotional day in a lot of other ways as well. And it just really, again, speaks to the character of this team collectively.
Yeah, just wrapping up with football, that bowl game of victory against Jacksonville State, the 11th win of the season, most wins in program history in Ohio football.
Yeah, and that was a conference champion they beat. I mean, that was a very good football team that they played. I mean, they played two outstanding opponents back to back and won two incredibly big games.
Yeah.
Jacksonville State was a phenomenal team.
Yeah. So
Brian Smith is 1-0.
shout out to B Smith. Really, really cool stuff. All right. So speaking of MAC champions, women's soccer, the 2023 MAC champions, 2024, a really solid season for the Bobcats. They lost in the MAC semifinals, but they won 10 or more games for the fourth time over the last 6 seasons. So Aaron Rodgers is doing a great job continuing to build the culture of the women's soccer program. And it was again on display in 2024.
Yeah, the irony there is the strength of the team was demonstrated during the regular season. Because if you think back to the championship group, they had an up and down regular season. It was it was okay. It was a good season, but they kind of came in, figured it out right at the end, got hot, and rode that wave.
Yep.
And actually, overall, Aaron would tell you they performed better beginning of the season to the end of the season as an overall program last season, even though they stopped out in the MAC tournament.
I think that when you think about what Aaron Rodgers had, he's been here for a while, from the beginning to 10 plus years at OU. Where have you seen him grow the most from your lens as a coach since you got here and as an athletic director?
Did you warn Coach Rodgers that you're going to ask that question? Because I have a funny story about him.
I actually just thought about that 2 seconds ago.
You might so run this back with him and make sure he's comfortable with me telling the story. On my interview in 2019, Aaron Rodgers was one of the most vocal coaches in the coaches session that I had as a candidate to be the athletics director. And he had a number of things that he was interested in seeing the next AD address. And, his experience at that point had been positive with the players and the people who come through the program, but he really felt like his program was at a plateau in terms of support. And he essentially made the argument. And by the way, I think I wasn't the only finalist he made this with. My understanding is he was pretty consistent over the course of the interview. He was basically like, look, you say this is a great job, but I want to know what you're going to do for us. Like, you can come in and you can use all the marketing slogans you want. You can talk about potential and how much you want to be an AD here, but what are you going to do for our programs? And he and I have laughed about that now in the years since, because he at that point had enough years and time on campus to understand that in order for his program to continue to advance, he wanted a leader who could be, a partner in that. And I think he would say to you that, while maybe they haven't been able to do everything they, have dreamed about, we really changed the culture and the philosophy and the approach to 16 sports across the board as opposed to the former philosophy. And so what I've seen in Aaron is I've seen him go from being somebody who, had some very pointed questions and expectations and demands really to get behind his program. And then when he received some of that support, really level up his game and say, okay, I've gotten this additional support. I'm going to, rededicate and think about how I'm leading this program. He's got a great staff. Courtney is hands down, I think, the best assistant coach in the MAC, and they're a great team. Mm-hmm. But to his credit, he asked for it. And then, a lot of us do that. A lot of us will say, well, here's what we could do if only you supported me. If only you gave me, we ask that of our bosses, of our leaders, of whoever. And to his credit, he actually then held himself accountable to do that. And he's done a tremendous job, I think, building equity into the program with the additional resources he's received.
That's a really great answer. and
it's true. It's to Aaron's credit.
Yeah, no, it's real. It's authentic. And 2024, even though it wasn't a MAC championship, it was just another example of being at the top of the league. They were at the top of the league. Very different from 2023, where they got hot, like you mentioned. But Nora Roush was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year for Bobcats. Jamison Brooker, Eve Barish, Celeste Sloma, and Maya Kaufman, all MAC honors. So many of those Bobcats are coming back as well, and I'm always excited for just sports to get back rolling again. But after hearing that with Aaron Rodgers, there's like an edge, fires me up.
Yeah. Do you see it? I think he's grown. Yeah,
absolutely,
as a coach.
Absolutely, and he is one that it's hard to articulate, but he is as somebody in the external department, he he answered our asks too when it came to leveling up. He got more involved in what we were doing. He got on board with what we were doing when it came to things like influencer and our media day. I remember our first media day, he was like, this is
not what he preferred to do.
Let's just go, like, what we got an hour, let's do it. And then by the end, they were 6 hours long, 7 hours long, maybe too long. But he saw value, and he saw value in the entire department. And he helped everybody level up, and he didn't push back as we were all trying to level up. So I really appreciate that about Coach Rogers, and he was great to work with. Yeah.
So like I mentioned, again, consistent success with this Ohio women's soccer team, 4 10-win seasons over the last 6 years, really impressive. And they continue to retool and bring student athletes back. So I'm excited for 2025 Ohio women's soccer. How about we move over to Ohio field hockey? More fall sports coverage. They played in a lot of competitive and close games in 2024. Allie Johnstone will be the first to tell you. And I think this is one of the programs, at least just for me, having conversations with Coach Allie and the student athletes, I just hear about the passion of balancing both what it means to be a student and an athlete, just from the conversations that I have with that program, and it resonated this past year. But yeah, a lot of close game.
Allie really bakes that into her team philosophy. She, and I would say, I know we're not talking about spring sports, but I think she and Jenna Hall both are really dedicated to a full cycle of development for their players, and a lot of close games, but sometimes you go through those kinds of seasons, right, T?
Yeah. Like you said, Coach Allie, she very much influences her athletes to look beyond, playing field hockey. With that, though, they are always encouraged to continue to keep, the ball rolling. Like, they are not ones to be negative, but they're also very involved within outside of just playing field hockey. I mean, you had some athletes, one is the president of Morgan's Message, and you have other athletes that are really involved in SAC. And then Coach Allie, you see her at pretty much all the events that are for student athletes. So it's really good to see that as well. But also the positivity is shown even when it's a tough game. So it's good to see that.
Yeah.
Nine games decided by 1 or 2 goals. So even though Ohio didn't win a MAC championship in field hockey, they made it to the MAC tournament. They played against Miami. They're taking steps in the right direction. And then I mentioned just outside of the field, 11 student athletes on the NFHCA Division I National Academic Squad. That was hard to memorize, so I had to look at it.
Good work, Sam.
And then 3 on the All MAC team as well. So I think field hockey is moving in the right direction. And Coach Johnson is just such a great person. So we'll see what happens in 2025. Over to volleyball. The Bobcats certainly battled through some adversity, dealt with some injuries at times during the season. Also a lot of close matches, it felt like, as well. But I think thinking about 2024 from an on-court perspective, 2 of the best pin hitters in the MAC, Anya Archinska and Cam Hunt. Anya Archinska, a first-team All-MAC selection. She absolutely deserved that. So I had a lot of fun watching that, and I know the fans did as well, because there was a lot of serious smoke from the outside. I mean, it was fire.
You don't want to be on the other side of the net when that's coming your way.
You do not. But yeah, I enjoyed that. And then again, also away from the court, Liv Gardner and Liz Horline. Liz Horline and McKenna Schaefer, 2 seniors that we'll miss, but Liz Horline and Liv Gardner on the CSC Academic All-District team. But yeah, I love what I saw from volleyball in 2024.
Yeah, it was really also, we keep talking about growth. It was a growth year for them as well.
Yeah.
And a stretch year in some ways. And they at times turned the corner and figured out how to win some of those close matches too, which is really critical. And then, I think we owe a lot of gratitude to Jeff Carlston. He came back coming right out of COVID at a time when it was difficult for all the coaches. And he came back and kind of reset our program. And, his winning percentage is impressive. And
it is.
He's on the board for all-time winningest coach in the history of our program. It's hard to imagine somebody who came in and got as many dubs for the amount of time he put in over 2 stops. And so we really benefited from his veteran leadership, and he's got that program in really good shape. And then I'm excited for Kinsey.
Really excited.
She's got an opportunity here. She'll lead us in the fall, at least through this season. And you know, I think she's got a lot of bright prospects as a future head coach, and we're excited to work with her and see how she does in this role.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned from Ohio volleyball this past season, especially going on the road with them to LA, is connection is such a major key, and how much, you know, with Kenzie taking over as interim head coach, how relatable she is to the student athletes, her experience playing at a high level at Creighton, and how much of an impact I think she is going to have is going to be great. And I'll miss Jeff Carlson as well. He was you mentioned just the record is off the charts. At one point, I think in the mid 2000s, they had won 64 straight conference matches.
It's just obscene.
It is insane.
It is. And you know, if you think about Kenzie's experience as a player at Creighton, in her 4 seasons, they were Big East champs all 4 years. And so I think, you know, those kinds of experiences, not everybody gets to have an opportunity to be part of. And they really are baked into what she sees as success and how she defines it as success. And there's no better way to learn how to do that than to be in it every day. You know, the old saying, iron sharpens iron. And so she brought a lot of that as an assistant with Jeff to this group. And I think she will push them in ways that would be really good for them, because she is a winner.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
Regard like nothing else.
That's what she knows.
Nothing
That's
else.
what she knows, you know, and so she'll bring them to it. And then, I mean, you know, like I said, we can't say enough about Jeff. He's in our Hall of Fame. You know, we will look forward to seeing him back. And there's a reunion of a group he was, you know, big part of coming back this fall. And we wish him and his family the best as he sails off into other things and hangs up his coaching. I don't know where to go with that metaphor. Helmet?
No, helmet.
Career?
Whistle? Career? What? As he moves out of coaching. Hats.
Tie. He always had a tie on.
Coaching tie.
Coaching tie. Yeah. That's
Coaching
3/4 zip. Anywho. We wish him and his family the best.
Since Steiner's not here, I'll be the stat guy.
Oh yeah, do it.
125 and 27 in the MAC.
I mean that's
wow,
really good.
And he was
really good.
He was 15 and 12 in the national tournament. And to have a winning record in the NCAA tournament is, I mean, that means you went on some runs. I mean, that was not he did not just show and
we didn't just make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he made it and won matches.
Right.
Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool stuff.
stuff.
But yeah, growth for sure with Ohio volleyball. Wrapping up our fall sports segment with men's and women's cross country. It's a little hot outside to go get a run in right now, but men's and women's cross country teams, starting with the women, I mean, they are knocking on the door at a MAC championship in cross country. They finished in 2nd place as a team, and they had Kelsey Harris, Allie Martin, and Layla Bucedra all on the All-MAC squad. So the distance group on the women's side is legit. Sarah Peace will be the first to tell you that.
Yeah, but also it's true.
Yeah,
it's also
it
true.
is.
What do you think, T? What have you seen out of that group over the last few years?
Outside of the fact that they can run really well, they are like all sisters. And I think that, you know, even though this is an individual, they think about it individually. When you go to the conference, it's about your team. And they all are pushing for each other to get to that line. And you can tell that they practice together, they eat dinner together, they hang out together, they laugh, all these things. So it's just a showing of, you know, the team chemistry is true, and then pushes them to a MAC championship. And none of them are losers. Like, they don't like the feeling of that. So this second at MAC championships is something that they were, you know, excited for, but they are not satisfied with.
Yeah, they are racers.
Yeah.
They do move in a pack. Now that you say that, I'm like, actually, that's true. You never see one without the others. But they are racers. And I will tell you, I think you guys know this. So Sarah was a student athlete at a school I worked at earlier in my career.
Mm.
And man, she was a fierce racer. And her coach who sadly passed away this year, her coach and mentor, who sadly passed away this year, would always say, she wasn't built the way, a distance runner would be. She wasn't fast. She wasn't this way. But man, don't bet against her, because she is a racer and a fierce, fierce competitor. And I think she is building a distance group that reflects that, as most teams do. They, reflect the personality of their head coach. I've never seen anyone who battles more in a race than Sarah when she was, when she was racing in the Big Ten.
I learned a lot about the team aspect of cross country from Coach this year. I mean, we had some longer conversations about that when she'd be in the office. I mean, that was something that somebody who's somewhat foreign to the sport. I mean, I learned a lot about what you said about being a team and being in a pack and how valuable that is. And Coach Peace really taught me a lot about that this year. And they showed that. Their results showed that. I think they had the highest regional ranking ever this year.
With the three girls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the men as well, continuing to climb up, and they were fifth at MAC championships. Andrew Bracken landed on the all MAC team. He's pushing closer and closer to being on that podium. So a lot of exciting stuff for men's and women's cross country. And yeah, I can't wait to see what 2025 has in store for the Bobcats.
We'll talk about that distance group another couple times, I think, by the time we're done today. That cross country season was a preview of what was to come.
It was. So stay tuned. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But that is a wrap on our fall sports summary. So we'll have winter sports coming up. Stay tuned for that. And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, Bobcats. It's now time for our winter sports recap. Let's take a look. That was awesome. That was great. A lot of goosebumps and chills at that end part right there.
Emma does such a great job. Shout out to Emma. I know we said that in the last segment too, but that video was awesome.
She's with the Steelers right now. She's interning with the Steelers. Shout out to her. I'm not a Steelers fan, but
I know.
But shout out to Emma.
You're an Emma fan.
I am. I'm a massive Emma fan.
Yeah, she's great.
So our winter sports were awesome, as you can see. You saw just from that recap there, and I want to start with women's swimming and diving.
Sam likes to start with the highlights and come in.
I get goosebumps every time I think about what women's swimming and diving did this year.
Yeah.
2024, 2025 campaign. Swimming is a long season.
It is.
Like it starts all the way back in October, and then pretty much is done in March, although we do actually have a swimmer competing this week. We're taping this in early June. But the real season I'm talking about, it just feels like a long season, but it was an epic season. Second place at the MAC championships, right behind Akron. They're knocking on the door, trying to take down the Zip soon. Mason Norman, coach of the year. I could go on, and we'll talk throughout about some of the things, but what impressed you the most, Julie, about what women's swimming and diving did this year?
Yeah, just a continuation. I think they had a really great championship last year when we were able to host, and that gave them a little bit of a taste for what was possible. The thing that I would say that struck me was we had a head coaches meeting in the middle of the week before the week of the championships. And, nobody loves a meeting, right? I ask the head coaches, we get together once a month, and that's probably their least favorite thing to do. But we have great conversations. They all participate. Mason usually is really animated and engaged in those meetings as well. He came into that particular meeting already locked in. And he had this, this walk about him, this look about him. He was sitting in his chair. He didn't say much during the meeting. And afterward, I said, Mason, it's unlike you, especially some of the things we were talking about. He had engaged in those topics, before, everything good. And he's like, I'm locked in. I'm ready. And I thought, oh, here comes the, and it's like, we're going to win a relay. And he was right. That was big. And so for me, as an administrator, you see coaches, and we've talked about how teams are a reflection of their coaches, but they have to manage their energy too. And I will admit to you, Wednesday of the week before championship week, I was a little like, whew. He's pretty intense, a few days out. But I think his team was as well. And they were able to go and be focused and yet relaxed. And that is like the sweet spot. Would you agree, Tanaya? Like that is where you hit your true potential.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you've trained for all year, like you can blow it at the end if you don't find that like sweet spot. And clearly they did. I mean, you were with them. They were locked in all week, supporting each other all week and then hitting those marks. But that relay, that relay they won, that was the statement that they had arrived.
Shout out to Luke Steiner, who was at MAC Championships capturing the content. And then I went to NCAA's. But what were you going to say?
I'm just saying, like, his thought process of telling you, like, we're going to win a relay, and then having several of these athletes win multiple events on top of it, and then getting second in the championship. It's like he just had that foundational push to, like, he's locked in that. And then they just progressed off of that.
Yep.
And it was, I mean, they are a locked in team.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it was like he had his game plan.
Yeah.
And he was so confident in their training that it wasn't even necessarily about Zita's going to win her races and she's going to get, to nationals. And some of the things we were talking about before a year earlier where we have a chance to do these things. He had mentally moved past that.
Right.
He was confident in how they were going to swim individually. And he had figured out this was the race that was going to matter. And it was actually earlier in the meet.
First day, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was the first
200
night.
medley relay.
And so he's like, if we win that one, then it's a wrap.
When you say that sweet spot of like, that it's a high competitive, place, but also just being just being relaxed. It's the true like definition of just being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Obviously, you've been there before, but also this is something, and it's still new. It's different athletes, different competition, just a championship environment, but also like they were comfortable and content within their coaching and within the athletes that they are, and you could see it.
It's totally different when you don't question the plan. You don't question your preparation.
Yeah.
You visualized it. You know exactly how it's going to go. And you are so confident in that you are focused, but not worried. And I think Zita, models that every meet. I mean, she is so consistent in that way. And so she's talented and she's physically built for the sport and she's trained a lot. And I don't want to take anything away from any of that effort and her natural, given abilities. But man, she manages that mental part
so well. She's such a professional. And to recap Max really quickly, we had a MAC champion in Zita Zoki in three events individually: 50 free, 200 free, 100 free. Cassidy DeBetta, MAC champion in the 200 breast and 100 breast. And then Gabby McKee, who ended her career in style with a MAC championship gold medal in the 400 IM, one of the hardest races. So it was great. But Zita, to your point, being a professional, that professional aura. I remember being at NCAA's with Zita out there and the staff and everybody. Caroline Dunnigan was out there as well. And I remember Caroline told me, she was like, yeah, like Zita really motivated me just based on like her presence and approach to the sport. She's so locked in, she's so dialed in, and Caroline was a part of that 200 medley relay. So, but seeing what Zita did at NCAA's 11th place finish in the 100 freestyle, 47.62 will forever be ingrained in my head as she became the first Bobcat in 25 years to be an All-American. I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah, and it was the highest finish by a Bobcat since '95.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quite a season. And Zeta, I mean, to do it back-to-back years and get better, just shows how talented she is and what her willpower, I guess, her training power, and shout out to Mason as well and the staff for
Also Coach of the Year. He was
Coach of the Year,
Coach of the Year.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And a year ago, it was fun to see her performance. And I would say the narrative a year ago was like, who's that? And then this year, her story took over the narrative. And so it's fun to watch. The talent that cover those national events are legendary Olympic,
Rowdy
medalists.
Gaines, shout out to Rowdy for acknowledging Zeta Zoki on the broadcast.
Yeah, and for gassing her, and talking about her storyline, and look at this, and it's Ohio, and that's just so cool for us, for her, but also for us and for our university. We were talking about alums and, how proud they are in the last segment, and to be, to watch her finish and then see the graphics go up on the screen and it's Ohio before these other huge, big brand schools is, a little point of pride. I don't mind that, Tanaya.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
You shouldn't one bit.
All right, moving on to men's basketball. Play with expectations this year. They were picked first in the MAC preseason poll, had that target on their back, and navigating that is much different. Whether you pay attention and notice that as a student athlete or coach or a fan's perspective, that's very, very challenging. And the injuries kind of came up at unfortunate times with Aiden Hadaway going down and AJ Clayton in and out of the lineup a little bit as well. But Jeff Bowles continues to establish love what you do, love who you do it with, and love where. Those three things really resonate. So it was an up and down season as far as navigating all that, and I'm sure you can add more on just how challenging that is with the expectations playing with that from your lens. It's probably hard.
Yeah, I mean, they had injuries at unfortunate times. I think also the fact that we're describing that season as an up and down season, which I think a lot of people would agree with you, Sam, is reflective of the strength of the program. It actually was a great season, you know, and there were also close games. There were games that I think if we'd been able to play with a full lineup at our full strength would have gone in our favor instead of others. And if you think back to that Akron win here in the Convo,
that was big.
That night felt like what Ohio men's basketball can be. It was a rowdy crowd. Yeah. We had great attendance and great fan support all season. We hit another, wave of high marks there as we look year to year around our attendance and our revenue. And our fans just provide, I think, the best atmosphere in the MAC. And man, that night was electric.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was great. And you saw it in the results and also in our ability to have a nearly full, not completely, we didn't have everybody back, but a nearly full roster that night. And we were able to hang that night with the best in the league. And by the way, due respect to that team as well. That Akron team was legit this year. They were good. They ran like a hot knife through butter through our league. But they stumbled at the Convo.
They did.
It's a tough place to play.
It's a tough place to play.
That was definitely a highlight win of the season. Yeah. Jeff Bowles picking up his 100th win at Ohio as well as a head coach. Former Bobcat student athlete. That definitely is an awesome accomplishment. I think that really resonates with me from this season as well.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Yeah.
To cut you off,
Go ahead.
Quick note: you mentioned tough place to play in the Convo. 12-3 at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you extend that out too, it's the losses might be in the double digits, but it's not more than 10. I mean, it's not much more than 10. I mean, they have been. Ken Palm tracks this. At one point, it was like 40th toughest place to play in the country. Or there are 363.
That's pretty good company to be in. I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to play in Athens. Just shout out to the fans, shout out to the environment.
Yeah,
tough place to play.
I was just about to say that with Coach Bowles and his history with Ohio, seeing how much he really inverses himself as just an alum, but also as a coach, and him engaging with the fans reflects from the team as well. And then the fans and the team are very reciprocative of each other, and the energy with that really helps them with the win. Even if they lose, there's still some excitement because it was a good game or it was a close game, or you just see it's fun to watch.
They're in it. And basketball, there's the combos, I think, again, I'm biased, but the combos really set up for basketball.
Yeah.
And it's loud without being completely full. It can carry a larger crowd, but man, you can get close to the court and feel like you're right in it. Our student section has continued to grow.
Yeah.
The band's always fantastic. That that group, you saw them in the video, that group that sits along courtside. You're right. It takes one look across the court from Bulls, and that group is they're rowdy. Just ask the officials in the Mid-American Conference.
Yes.
They are engaged in it, and it really creates a lot of fun. We get great student support and engage our crowd. And our crowd is engaged in Peden too.
Yes.
They are, but basketball is such an intimate sport.
It is.
You feel it differently in that venue.
It's a perfect venue.
It's
for it.
perfect.
And
venue
hearing
for
from
it.
opponents, I'm friends with other players it's the hardest place to play.
For sure.
It's the hardest place to play.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're
Not
proud of that.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
No.
Did want to shout out AJ Clayton for that 31-point performance where he went 9 of 10 from 3, fourth most made threes in a game ever in Ohio men's basketball history. So that night was insane. He hit 9th, and I remember one moment after he hit a 3, he put his hands on his head and was just in pure shock. I don't know how this is happening. This is crazy. So yeah, that was great. And the other 2 seniors, Vic Searles and Sharif Mitchell, they were a big part of this team
Huge
as
part.
well.
Yeah.
So
Reeve battled. He battled through injuries.
He did too.
He played with a lot of heart this year. And Vic was a great addition. He got in there and did his job, and so good group. And so I hear you, and maybe picked to at the start of the season in a different place than where they finished, but we're really happy with that program and where it's going.
Seems like every night they had a different lineup out there, and it's got to be tough just to
adjust.
It's got to be tough to build when you have a different lineup out there. Jeff has been great going into March. Yeah, he's got his lineup set. The team's playing their best in March, and it felt like it was harder to get. I mean, they played well down the stretch to beat Akron, obviously, who was 13-0 going into that game in the MAC. But they struggled to get it going because they had so many different lineups out there, and the building, it was just harder to build towards March for Coach Bulls.
Yeah.
And that's not it. I mean, that's injuries do that, and that's okay.
I'll tell you what, though, Jackson got better
Yes,
throughout the season.
Yeah.
He's going to be fun to watch. There's some good elements there, and we've got some great transfers also that are getting ready with those guys. They're going to play on a new floor this year too.
Yes.
So
I saw the picture.
Yeah.
Kind of strange to see it ripped out.
It is. I'm sure it's all going to be put back and you're ready to go on time.
Good.
And it doesn't make me nervous at all as an athletics director. I'm sure it's all going to be ready to go. And because right now it's looking a little rough. Did you peek in?
I haven't peeked. I saw there was a picture on the internet.
Yeah.
I last time we just sanded it down.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I never seen the floor,
Actually,
the undersurface. Yeah. The grid and the under. Yeah. I'm sure all that's going to get back in place. Exactly where it belongs.
It definitely will.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
all right, let's transition to yes. What's up?
Last producer note for men's basketball. Shorzy mentioned again going back to the tough place to play. I looked since 2020, Ohio men's basketball has only lost 10 games here in the Convo.
That's crazy.
And this season, we talked about tough games this season. 17 of our games were decided by 10 points or fewer. 12 were decided by 5 or fewer points. So
that's a good fact check.
Great fact.
Yeah.
So again, Ohio men's basketball, they were there pretty much in every game. It felt like, at least. So great culture with the men's basketball program.
Absolutely.
staff and the student athletes. Cool to be around them. Moving on to women's basketball, continuing to try to find ways to step up. They've had some rough seasons over the last couple of years, but really this year again, the injuries, that was sort of something in the beginning that, we didn't see Jay McClure at all this past season. Monica Williams got hurt early in the season, and that forced Bailey Tabling to play point guard, which is something that she didn't really do much of in her freshman year at all. So she was more of a ball handler her second year. And that was something that shout out to Bailey for accepting that role and going with it. That's one thing I remember talking to her about that.
Yeah.
Just how you got to be accepting of when things happen, to step up. And so that's when I said earlier, stepping up, Bailey Tabling, an example of that, to move into a different role. And Bob Bolden is a winner here. And so sometimes you go through those ebbs and flows, like we talked about, I think yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, college sports tonight, I can tell you this, is about adversity too. We've talked a lot about winning so far, but it's also a lot about figuring out how to manage yourself through adversity. Sometimes we ask you to play out of position. Sometimes, you're fighting as hard as you can to get back from injury. Sometimes it's something mental going on. Sometimes you just don't have all the pieces on a roster, let alone healthy at the same time. And I think at different times of the season, really over the last 2 seasons, that has been the case with this program. We've talked a lot in the off season about how we focus on some of the support areas and talk more directly about the support on injury and, prevention and recovery around the conditioning around the program. They've been actively recruiting in the portal, and I think changing up the philosophy a little bit there. I think what we talked about as we were getting ready for this is what strikes me is in the, how many years now, 5 years since COVID, this program is the program that was most impacted, I think, by the shutdown. Because if you remember, then also a Bob Bolden led team, they were coming off a 30-win season. I would tell you in the 1920 year, they were our best team and poised for postseason right as it shut down. And then they had several returners who came back and used their extra COVID year, some of whom then ended up injured. Cece Hooks, we talk a lot about, and we rightfully so, we should. She's, best player. We've had best player and best scorer in the league on the men's and women's side.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been that long since we've been in those days, but we have struggled to find our traction coming out of that stoppage of the program. And so we've talked a lot about how to help get that roster, where it needs to be, help give the support to the players who are here and working their way through it. And sometimes your college career is about how you manage through adversity. And we this year, we dedicated their locker room, did some refreshes and dedicated their locker room, and actually named it after an alum.
I remember that.
That the majority of her time here, even though she was a celebrated player and came in and loved her time at OU, has been very successful coming out of the College of Business over, decades, and has given back to her program. But the story she shared with them was, I know what this feels like because I had a similar time during my 4 seasons. But what you got to know is you play for the whole program, and there are so many great takeaways from the experience. And Ann Freeman, shared a great story with us as we were dedicating that locker room, and really inspired me a lot with, her perspective of what it means to have the full student athlete experience.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Miss Freeman, and she did. I asked her, like, why are you giving back? Like, what's your reasoning? And it was kind of what you described. It's bigger. Like, the program it wasn't just about my experience at OU. It's about everybody's experience and continuing on to make an impact on the program. So that was a big thing. I know, Bob was really, really appreciative of that, contribution, and for her to get the locker room named after her. I mean, that's incredible. So there were a lot of cool moments both on and off the field, or on and off the court, I should say, with women's basketball. Going back to on the court, got to shout out Kennedy Watkins, all MAC, just an incredible person before athlete. Kate Dennis, you could say the same. I mean, the whole team really, but Kate Dennis, we had conversations with Kate Dennis about what it means to be a student athlete, and her intentionality behind, like, developing relationships, right?
Yeah. She was big on the team aspect as well, but also just, like you said, being intentional about where you are, who you do it for. Don't really, obviously you want to win, but you cannot get yourselves too caught up on the losses that, you know, you become negative, a very positive athlete. And I think that's good. And she adapted to, you know, the different things that were happening within the sport, their sport of basketball, women's basketball. And, you know, she grew from that. But that's throughout I think the entire team. You can see that, you know, there wasn't really a negative thing that was portrayed. And they really kept going. They kept the ball rolling. Seriously.
I listened to that interview. You guys did a great job of that interview. What I remember is her talking about the impact of smiling and like energy and positive energy.
That was powerful.
She was like, even when I see somebody on the sidewalk or walk by them, no matter how I feel, and most of the time she said, you know, I feel pretty good, you know, 'cause she manages her mental energy. But she was like, you know, what I can do is smile.
Yeah.
And they can receive it or they cannot, but I know I can pass that on. And it was such a simple example of what she was talking about that you were describing tonight, but it's stuck with me. I mean, that was several weeks ago, months ago now that you guys recorded it. She'll be a GA in our department this year. You know,
I think I heard.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, she's in the dual program.
Yeah.
The world famous sport
world famous
administration program. We give Schulze a hard time because he's an alum of the world famous program. And so she's halfway through that program and will be finishing up a year from now, but she's going to be a GA with the OBC, with the fundraisers. Yeah.
I'm old, and I remember that she committed while we were playing at NIU my first year here, and they were like the staff was just so excited that they got her.
Yeah,
she had a bunch of offers, a lot of MAC offers. I think a Big East offer. And the fact they got her, I remember the excitement and like joy in the staff that they got her to commit. And she was joyful all 5 years she was here.
Just a good example. And there are others. Kennedy is another example who had a different pathway.
Right.
But man, in the time they were here, boy, did they make a contribution and an impact. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And one quick other note on women's basketball, shout out. We brought up Bob Bolden earlier, but he also picked up a milestone win in his coaching career, his 200th win. I believe there are 8 coaches in the MAC. Don't quote me on this, but 8 coaches in the MAC, I think, that have at least 200 wins.
Like in the history of the MAC?
I think so. Wow. Yeah.
Jordan will fact check you here. We'll get a producer
I
fact
think
check
we had. I think we had
let
that.
Us know.
I think we had that on our ESPN Plus broadcast. Like we had a graphic where it was like head coaches in the MAC women's basketball with 200 or more wins.
Yeah,
so.
he's had a really great run here, and you know we're looking for more. We need leadership like that to get the program back on track.
Yeah. So again, shout out to women's basketball. A lot of big things coming up next year as well as we make the transition to 2025, 2026. Now on to wrestling, building on the foundation of the mat. Literally, figuratively.
I see what you did there. Oh, yeah.
No,
that was Jordan. That was the producer.
Don't hit the button.
Producer.
We had a MAC champion in wrestling. Garrett Thompson, MAC champion. Just an unbelievable season overall. He beat so many ranked opponents and was one of 2 Bobcats to qualify for NCAAs. Joel Greenlee is a personality. I love Joel. He's good energy. He's good energy.
Yeah, great guy.
So yeah. What was your perspective like watching the wrestling team in the 2024-2025 campaign?
Yeah, you know, we talked about Ali in this way in the other segment. Joel is also somebody who doesn't back down from a challenge. If he's got a wrestler who's ready, man, they get in the car, they fly, they do whatever they need to do, they go find the competition. And I really respect him for that. And I think he has a really good feel across his roster of, you know, who's ready for what stage of competition. And he works hard to try to find that. And the fact that he's so well respected in the industry, you know, he's able to get his wrestlers into some of those meets. And so we saw that. And we knew that last year. You know, he did the same thing last year with Peyton Keller. And we saw that then, you know, again this year with Garrett as well, and with Jordan a little bit too.
Absolutely.
And really set those guys up then to be peaking at the right time at the end of the season. I think, you know, Joel would tell you he wanted more from the season. He felt like they could really challenge across the board at max, and they ran into a couple of competitors who, you know, were just better on that day. But overall, that's a program that continues top to bottom to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And they also, lift each other up and push each other. It's that contagious bit we talked about earlier when you got somebody who knows how to manage their mentals and come in and be focused and prepared yet relaxed and ready to go. I think Jordan's, a great example of that. It has a ripple effect on the entire team. They train like that every day and they're ready.
I think with Coach Greenlee, he's been here since 1998, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Long time.
Yeah.
He's been here for a while.
Having that foundation of the consistency and having that coach be there, it also penetrates throughout the athletes. They want to work because he's going to show up, and he's going to want them to work, and they reciprocate that with, all right, coach is going to show up and we're going to work as well. And it's a high level of respect. I mean, I couldn't go to a wrestling match when I was an athlete, but hearing wrestlers talk about Coach Greenlee and then talking to Coach Greenlee and then just talking to wrestlers in general, they all have this, we're competitive, but we're also, we really encourage other athletes. And, you just see that, and it's really good. Like we said, we talk about the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
It's something that, you can see it throughout the entire
Yeah, there's
team.
a brotherhood there. That's right. So Joel, and you all may know at the MAC meetings last week, we had an inductee into the MAC Hall of Fame.
We did,
who's just phenomenal. We'll probably talk about him here in a second. And so we were standing at that event, Joel and I were talking, and Joel said something along the lines of, yeah, the other day I was wrestling, I was on the mat, and I didn't hear anything after that. Who among our coaches is still like getting in there? So I'm not gonna, call him out for exactly how many years he's been here, but I whipped and looked at him and I was like, wait, did you say? He's like, oh yeah, so-and-so was out and whatever, I need to get in there for a little bit and get down and show him some stuff. And I'm like, that is amazing.
We just saw him out there and he has turf toe.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to give up the injury.
He has an injury.
He did walk away with a few aches and pains, but he's the kind of coach that if he's the one who can show how it's done, he's going to get down on the mat and show how it's done. Yeah. And I really, really deeply respect that.
Yeah.
And he, his program shows it as well.
Jake Percival, by the way, inducted into the MAC Hall of Fame recently.
Phenomenal wrestler.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Another one who's got a winning percentage that is just
off the charts.
Is that what Schulze, you look like you're about to drop those
figures.
No, I was
going to talk about Jordan Greer. But
hold on. Let's talk about Jake for a little bit.
Well, yeah, no, I just listened to his comments on social media.
Yeah.
That was he was so intense and powerful with his words as far as like how this university impacted him.
Yeah.
Which was great.
He's got a great story.
Yeah.
And he had his kids, his wife and kids. His wife, wife is a high school sweetheart. So wife and kids, sisters, father, mother, uncle, and then like 3 teammates. And at least a couple of them were his roommates as well, who were all at this dinner. And man, the stories they were telling. But what I took away with that, so it was a great night. It was a lot of fun. By the way, look up his winning percentage. It was.
I got it. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, it is. You want to fact check it. It's like, that's not possible.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But my takeaway from watching them enjoy the evening and watching, by the way, Joel and his wife, enjoy it with them, was, wow, what a village.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that all the time. Our athletes come out here and they compete on their own with their teammates, but it's them. And then what a great way to see all the people that made him the wrestler that he was. And he talked about that in his comments. And I think if each of our student athletes had that kind of support system, they would all be 4-time MAC champs. And what was his winning percentage?
He was 142-10.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. He, as a junior, he was 38-0 and he lost in the national championship. He was
which was a huge upset.
He
at
was
the time.
only 32-3 as a senior.
Wow.
Only. Yeah, exactly.
What an emphasis.
Yeah, it was something. It was over the winning percentage they quoted was like over 90%.
That's crazy.
Of his matches in college.
It's like right there with Ohio men's basketball's home record over a 5-year span.
Or football's home record, or Jeff Carlston's record. Over like it's just insane, and like most humble guy and great guy. But it was really cool to see his, like his tribe. with
Yeah.
him, you know, the people who contributed to that success.
Because it's
That's
more
great.
than just what happens in the 4 years. It's after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before and after.
Yeah.
Right. All
Yeah.
those years getting, I've heard you talk on the pod also about, you know, stories about your parents and starting track a little bit later than other people and what have
Mhm.
you. And nobody gets on one of our courts or fields or on the mat without somebody helping them get
Influence. Yeah.
there. Yeah. Without that influence.
4-time All-American, national runner-up, 3rd place finish, 4th place finish, beat the number 1, the defending national champion and the 1 seed his junior year. I mean, the list goes on and on.
That's by Schulze.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a stat.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
segment. Stats by
the
Schulze.
legacy of that program. And it's, you know, again, shout out to Coach Greenlee.
Yeah.
You know, it's decades of success and decades of
Truly.
excellence.
You were about to bring up Jordan Greer as well. I think he is just an incredible person, both on and off the
Ball
mat.
energy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
such a great guy. Really, really passionate.
Yeah, you did a great piece on him at the end of his career. He was a 4-year growth. You saw his growth over all 4 years, and it really culminated with I can't say that with
It's okay.
with a NCAA appearance. And he is just, you want to talk about contagious.
Battled injuries. He's a leader.
Yeah, Jordan Greer's first ever, real quick, his first like memory of wrestling, first time he ever started wrestling. I don't know if any of you know this, but he was at like a church retreat and he wrestled on like mattresses. He didn't even know it was wrestling. He was just a kid, just like, all right,
Being
I'll just do
active.
this. Let's do this. But yeah, a lot of strengths, especially with the upper weight classes for Ohio wrestling, something to watch moving forward. Finishing up with our winter sports indoor, we go inside track and field. Bright future ahead. All eyes ahead on this indoor track and field squad, both with distance and sprints. Allie Martin, we'll talk a lot about her as we transition to spring sports, but she picked up a medal, a 3rd place bronze medal in the 5,000 indoors. And then the DMR squad was tremendous. That's a unique race with different distances. 3rd overall, Caitlin Stewart, Eleanor Shuttleworth, Sarah Doman, and Ellie Greenwell. So that was exciting. You were actually at the indoor, Max,
full
to
circle.
witness these races that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. It was fun to watch. It was fun to be a track and field alum watching it. But yeah, we talked about how distance, you know, like you said, it was a preview. Allie Martin, she showed up with that 3rd place medal in the 5K, and indoor is a very short season. So you got to hit the ground running literally at the beginning, or else you're at the back of the pack. And you know, just a testament to the coaching and you know, DMR squad. They were looking at it last year at just a sense of like, we really just, you know, want to make podium or, you know, stuff like that. And now, you know, getting that medal is something that you're working towards, and you only run the DMR one time in its indoor season. So it's something that it's very highlighted, fun to watch. It was fun to see that from that different lens, honestly.
So Tanaya, just in case somebody's listening, they don't know what the distances are. Do you remember the DMR distances?
Putting her on the spot.
I did.
I think it's the 400. It's the 400, the 800, 1600.
Isn't it 2?
The
No,
200s in
That's
there?
not 2?
No, that's sprint medley.
Oh.
400, 800. Producer, please help.
He's gonna look
I
at
usually did not watch the DMR.
1200,
You did.
But you watched it.
Yeah.
1200, 400,
800, 1600.
16, yeah.
Because you don't run a 1200 outdoor. So I didn't know
Right.
about this medley relay until my first year here. Because
You wouldn't have seen that before.
never watched it.
And then the other thing, and I don't understand exactly how this works. Coach Peace was explaining this to me, though. At one point, we were top 5 in the country as a distance group in the
Yes.
indoor season.
Yeah.
And that is results of the various distance races
Yeah.
over some period of weeks of performance. Do you know how that comes
Yes.
together, how that
so
works?
they calculate their individual times, and they put it's like the median of like that specific group with the rest of the country.
With the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Wow.
So at one point, our girls it was Allie,
Yeah.
Kelsey, Alyssa, and Layla.
Yeah.
Their times calculated together. it was like an hour.
It's just a great measure of depth.
Yes.
I mean, so you can't just have one runner or one competitor who drives that for your entire group. And again, people always ask me questions like, what do you evaluate as an athletics director? How do you see progress besides wins and losses? And I don't necessarily always put a lot of stock in national rankings, but that one really caught my attention. Yes, because you have multiple data points going into that. You can't just weight it around one super talented athlete.
Yeah. I highly suggest, there's a lot of individual sports. Go or watch a championship and then talk to me about why it's not super competitive. Because a lot of people always express oh, it's not that competitive, or what is it really? Championship season is one to watch. Because honestly, a lot of things happen at that meet that I've never seen happen before. And I've been an athlete for 13 years. So, but yeah, it was fun to watch. And like I said, the Ohio track and field is continuing to grow. And indoor was just the opening the door of that.
All right. Well, coming up next, we'll take a quick break first, but coming up next, we'll have our spring sports recap. So stay tuned. Ready to rock and roll and unpack the spring sports from the 2024-2025 campaign. Let's roll the tape and look back at some of the moments from spring. Coach Piper giving us energy at the end of that. That was awesome. A lot of great still shots in that. Tanai, you made that.
Yeah, I bagged them.
You were in the video. I mean,
I was.
Yeah, that's cool.
That was a good moment, though.
It was.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about it. Sorry, Sam. I want still.
All good. Let's start on the mound with baseball. Bobcats, baseball, impact on and off the field. There was a lot of that despite the tough season record-wise and not making the MAC tournament. But I do want to start with baseball from a community standpoint. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the community impact that the baseball team did, Julie, that's something that resonated with their connection to East Elementary. Periodically, weekly, having some of their student athletes go to East Elementary and hang out with the kids. I thought that was a really good way to sort of navigate through what was the 2025 season.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it when we were getting ready for the pod yesterday. I was struck by the baseball players who talked about how that connection to the community helped them get through a tough season. And we talk a lot about community service, and we talk a lot about developing individuals and leaders in a lot of facets of life. And it was just a very tangible way, and they're using their own words and explaining that, it was weekend after weekend of tough losses and close games and getting to the end of games, sometimes ahead, sometimes with a win within reach, and then losing, those games in the late innings, and then, turning right back around and getting up the next morning and going in to spend time with the students at the elementary, and how for some of our players, it really kept them in a place where they could appreciate the larger picture, understand that it's a process, and in some ways maintain their perspective. And it was described to me by the players in a way I hadn't really thought about before. We talk a lot about community service, and our student athletes do a lot of community service, most of it driven by them. But they framed it in a way that was really impactful to me, and I think shows that there are a lot of ways that you can develop leadership. And, we're looking to get better with that program. I think better days are ahead competitively for that program. But I thought it was a really meaningful way for those guys to take other opportunities to fill the gaps from what they were not experiencing during this season. A lot of maturity on their part, I thought.
Absolutely.
And there were some bright spots, some strong performances, ending the season on a high note, taking the series at Western Michigan. A couple of student athletes on the all conference teams: Ben Slanker, first team All MAC; Matt Einich, freshman, second team All MAC. The numbers are crazy. Matt Einich. He only struck out 11 times all season. I think a lot of people look at the average, hit 387.
Yeah, it's incredible.
He struck out only 11 times the entire season. Just locked in. And I think that should resonate with people. And I thought too, I wrote this down as well. The 2015 MAC championship team was recognized during alumni weekend. So that was really cool. Mitch Longo shared the story about how he had a GoPro in his back pocket, ready to celebrate. He knew they were going to win in 2015, and that was cool. So
yeah, my question was, how did you get the GoPro? How did you get out? Get out of the dugout with that? But he had a slick answer to it.
Guess so. I didn't ask.
I won't reveal his secrets, but he had a pretty good answer.
Yeah, but no, that was great. And sending off 9 seniors. Nick Dolan, I remember chatting with some people about just how he's grown confidence wise from the time he got here to now. So baseball navigating through a tough season, but I think mentally, the mental side, I remember talking to a lot of the student athletes about that, how that's an important piece of it. So really cool stuff. All right, moving on to softball. The Bobcats continue to knock on the door. They're going to break that door down someday. It'll be soon. A MAC championship under Jenna Hall, I believe, is on the horizon. They're really close, Julie, and I'm excited for the future. But 2025 was a special year, and I think about the seniors.
Yeah.
It was a special group as they navigated through again, dealing with expectations.
Yeah, I think, because they were selected also preseason. They were the favorites going in. This is an example, again, of how do you look for progress and how do you understand the progress that happens in between the records. And the last 3 years, Jenna's been coach of the year. Two of the last 3 years. They finished second in the MAC those years. But also in that time, 3 very different teams, and each year getting better as a program. And so this year, they went into the last day of that MAC championship tournament with the advantage, which is a position they had not been able to earn before. Before, they were always sort of playing from behind and trying to catch up and knock out, Miami. And all due respect to Miami, over 2 coaches now, they have a nice long run going. But I agree with you. I think if you're going to put money on anyone, not that we do that, but if we were to, Coach Hall and her program is the place to look. And I think they were pretty heartbroken not to make it out with that MAC championship and to go to the NCAA tournament this year. They will grow from that. Yeah, they will learn from that. They have a lot of firepower coming back. We have to talk about Skip Miller and her performances over the course of the season, but she wasn't the only one. No, and they have a lot to look forward to, and then a really special group of seniors. That as this is always the case, you always want your seniors to go out playing their best, with a victory. But that group particularly had gone through a coaching change. Had gone through COVID. They were sort of the last of that group, and we built the program we have now through their leadership and on their backs. And so, a lot of heartbreak, but it was a big, big step forward for our program to be in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And I think, collectively, that's something we have to continue to be more comfortable in and learn how to manage in a way where we come out on the other side. We tend to really, across all of our sports, respond well to chasing and being the underdogs. We fill out that story and that narrative in a lot of ways. Even administratively, we do that. We talk about punching above our weight, but now I think we're ready as a department to start thinking and preparing for the time when we go in as the favorites and how we step up to that moment. And the softball program is a great example of a program that's ready to teach us how to do that. And I think they will. Mm-hmm.
Skip Miller, MAC Pitcher of the Year, to your point. We have to shout out Skip. She threw not one, but two no-hitters
That's
this
crazy.
season.
I mean,
That's just.
but if you look at her
bonkers.
on the video, like she is, if you could screenshot that, like she looks like somebody who throws no hitters.
Yeah.
Like,
Laser
she's-
focus.
her presence is something, man.
Yeah, been there, done that. And then you mentioned the seniors. I think the one thing that stands out about this softball senior class is it's a very unique group that all of them were connected before they got to Ohio.
Right. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. Travel ball, being in the same area, and definitely emotional seeing their careers come to an end. But Jenna Hall, MAC Coach of the Year, Brenna Farmer, who will be back. She in her sophomore season, first team All MAC, and landed on the NFCA All Great Lakes All Region squad. Two freshmen stepped up as well. Abby Kennelly at shortstop. And Anna Wise, who for pretty much all season led the MAC in ERA. Ohio's pitching staff has been just unreal under head coach Jenna Hall.
Yeah, you talked about the evolution and the different teams that Jenna has had. This is the deepest team
For sure.
from on the mound or in the circle, excuse me, that they've had, and to have. I mean, I think that helps Skip. She's the ace, but to have somebody behind her who's that good, who's also an all-MAC type performer,
Yep.
really helped Skip and really helped the team.
To
throughout the year.
have three pitchers, that's really what the separator was from talking to the coaches just from last year to this year is having Anna Wise, Skip Miller, and Mikey Living, and they led the MAC in ERA this year. So, yeah, big.
They were fun to watch.
They were.
They were an exciting group.
They're a funny group. They're a funny group for sure.
Skip's MAC ERA was 1.54, which is
Yeah.
just absurd. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Gosh.
Dominant.
Yeah, but we'll turn the page on softball. Keep things rolling here, and get over to outdoor track and field. Continuing to set the pace, set the tone for what's to come. I think in 2025, having that front row seat to the MAC championships was big, and what it takes first to host a MAC championship. All the administration, everything behind the scenes. I mean, that's something I'm sure from your lens, Julie, is a topic that comes up months and months before the actual event. You got to prepare for a lot of things. And I thought that everyone did a great job.
Yeah, I think also, track is a very technical sport. There are a lot of things happening throughout the day at the same time over a broad range of events and even areas within the track complex. And so, some people can be tempted to think it just runs itself, but that could not be farther from the truth. And so, Gavin Linkus and Chase Harris and frankly, Coach Peace and her staff helped out a lot to get ready for it. And then at the end of the day, as it often is around our hallways, everybody pitched in. Volunteers. Mason Norman, our swim and dive coach, was like, was he back gate security or something? Team entrance security. Took his role very seriously,
He did.
by the way. He was back there. But a lot of the coaches came over. I know, Allie was there. On one day, I know we're going to talk about men's and women's golf here in a minute. Our women's golf coach was the volunteer. How she described her role. She was over in the throws area. And so have you ever thought about this, Sam? So our competitors throw whatever it is they're throwing. It happened to be javelin, I think was the event. Somehow, and then the officials mark and decide whether or not it is, I don't know, help me tonight, like a fair throw, a fair effort. It doesn't have
fair or foul.
Fair, right. And then they measure the distance, right? But then what happens? Somehow that javelin
Pick it up.
has got to get out of the ground and then back, to the other side of the runway. And so that was Coach Kelly's job. And she was like, what's the irony of that? I'm the golf coach.
Yeah.
Like, we don't run ever. And she's running that javelin back and forth the entire, and so, just examples of how our group comes together. And you're right. I'm honored and blessed and proud to lead a department that really rises to the occasion. We not only want to have a great environment and a great event for the rest of the conference, but we want to show our student athletes that we care about them and care about the opportunity to host and give the best show we can. And they did that. Everyone pitched in.
The track and field program definitely took a major step in the season in terms of what they did at the MAC championships. Coach Peace told us tonight, I think you were with me when she said this, that we are excited for our progress, but we are not satisfied. And that really resonated with me as well. So that was cool. And the podium finishes were off the charts. A lot of podium finishes, a lot of things to be happy about.
Absolutely. Like you said, with Coach Pease's quote, I think people forget about that. You know, you could look at the stats, you could look at the rankings, you can look how everything went. But from an Ohio track and field perspective, seeing the progress individually, obviously points matter at the championships, but seeing that the glimpse of, that this is somewhere they can go with all these athletes, majority of them actually are coming back and they're able to, learn from what happened. Some got a medal from that and some podium. A lot of events that we never talked about podium, and you never talked about, Ohio being in the conversation.
Yeah.
They are talked about and they are in the conversation. Now you can look at it and it's like, okay, you got on podium. Now next is to get more points for the team. And I think going in a lot of years for Ohio track and field, it was more like, wow, this person's really fast. They can get themselves a medal. It's nice to see that. But now it's starting to be like, okay, we can actually build on points. And just from an alumni perspective, it made my heart happy.
Yeah. I think, again, it's one of those sports, if you don't watch it enough, you maybe follow an individual race or follow a particular competitor. But I have been the athletics director here I'm finishing my 6th year. And if you take out the COVID year, so in 5 years of outdoor MAC championships, this is the first time that we had people racing on the last day in the finals from essentially the beginning of the schedule to the end. And people who follow track understand you cannot score points if you're not running in the finals. It's that simple.
Facts.
And so my favorite day of the meet actually, Tanaya, was not so much the last day as it was the days where we had prelim heats and watching our competitors realize they were going to run again.
Yeah. That was
and not
huge.
just qualify and get to go to Max and run, the prelim or qualifying heat, but actually then get to come back and try to do better. And in a lot of cases, we matched or did better in the finals than we did before. And that is a sign of true progress. And I'm just really happy. And then also, I think the atmosphere created by the team, like everyone was there to watch everybody finish the meet, as opposed to my event finished yesterday and, I'm peeling off or this or that. Like the whole group began together and the whole group finished together. And it's been a few years coming to get to that point for your program, Tanaya.
It has. It was bittersweet because I wish, you always wish to be a part of stuff like that. But it's also like, it was good to watch from the other side. I'm watching certain events. I'm like, oh, I can't watch it. Making my back hurt. Making my legs hurt again.
Well, you laid the foundation.
Totally. Yeah.
I appreciate that. But without, several of these girls that, I seen compete in high school or they came and we recruited them, talked to them. It's like, it's fascinating. I mean, Ava Kincaid is somebody who stands out to me who walked on and, she wasn't somebody who really looked at the 400-meter hurdles and being in 5th place. I remember she came in junior year of high school and she was just like, I'm just, interested in track. Don't really know, all of it. And now here she is. It's stuff like that. And seeing my best friend, Taja Booker, do so well with what her story has been through. It's just great. And Gracie Smith, all these girls.
7 people landed on the podium from an individual event standpoint.
Yeah.
Which I think was huge. And Allie Martin getting another medal as well, bronze medal in the 5,000, 4th place in the 10,000. You brought up Taja Booker, that insane final leg of the relay.
Which would have put her on podium for the 400 as well, which is crazy. But also my favorite part, and we'll be off of them, but my favorite part is hearing other teams say, Ohio's ready to go for next year.
How does that feel?
I've been like, just pay attention. But I think that people gave up because of, like you said, the last day, you don't see a lot of green and white usually. And to green, black, and white, but to now see it, it was eye-opening for the conference. So
2025 was the year, T.
it was.
It's a big turning point year. Just
it was.
springboard.
It was. Good job.
Yeah.
Tim. That was good.
Speaking of springboarding, it's not super. It doesn't translate totally, but did want to shout out Emily Bauman as well. School record.
Yes.
Springing high into the sky on her pole vault. School record. It's not quite the transition.
It's about as close as you can make that. So I give you props for that.
Not quite the transition, but that is a hard event, and Emily changed poles actually. Not to get too technical into pole vault, but she did use a different pole that helped her and prioritized her hip movement. She told me so. That was great.
There are a lot of girls on this list that are in the record books for top 5.
That is true as well.
Yeah.
Please go to OhioBobcats.com and our social media platforms to check that all out. So, yeah. All right. Moving on to golf, both men's and women's golf. We'll start with women's golf as they continue to take steps in the right direction under Coach Kelly, who's done a great job here. Zoe Lubers, Morgan Rogers, and Mackenzie McCree all finished with the same final score, and they finished inside the top 20. So we had 3 Bobcats inside the top 20. All 3 of them, they were T18, tied for 18th. So that was a really cool accomplishment. And then back in the fall, the Rocket Classic, we had an outright champion in Mackenzie McCree as well. So those were some of the things that I had to mention. And first are top of mind when I think about women's golf, finishing 6th place for the 2nd straight year.
Yeah, that's another group that has a lot coming back.
Mm-hmm.
They lost a little bit of senior leadership, but they've got the heart, if you will, of their typical travel group coming back, and so it'll be interesting to see them continue to grow together.
The thing that we have talked a little bit about throughout the course of I think the last year or so has been the upgrades from a facility standpoint with the swing simulator room and the putting green fully for an entire year. Both of those facilities are up and running, and a lot of the student athletes have taken advantage of that, which I think from a resources standpoint, really prioritizing making things happen for all of our sports. That's an example of how golf has been impacted in a positive way. So
it extends the training time for both the men's and the women's programs. And I think, we renovated a section in the convocation center for those teams. And we have both the room with the hitting bays, the cage, and then also the putting greens. But in addition, there's a team room, there's a nutrition station, there's kind of a lounge area. And I will admit, when we talked with the men's and women's teams and explained to them our vision for that area, I think it was hard to see. If you can imagine the combo, I think it was hard to envision. And we met with them a couple of times through the project just to ask their input on a few things and a few of the final details of the space. But they use it a lot now. It's their home. And I think, it gives them an opportunity also to continue to build team. And the men are in there a lot too. They had a rough season here at the end. Then they're finished with Max, but some individual highlights along the way and some better outcomes earlier in the season. And I think you're right. It's an opportunity for us to try to invest in the development of our students, and particularly who the men's and women's team share a sport that doesn't have a wide range of local amenities and local courses to be able to support their development. So those indoor areas were critical.
Yeah. On the men's side, to your point, some individual performances to make note of. Nathaniel Gray Lamont and Matt Dalton finished in a tie for 26th at MAC Championships. Nathaniel had shot +1 in the first round, and we actually had Matt Dalton shoot under par in a round as well. Pinnacle Golf Club is where the men's golf MAC Championships were played. We hosted that on the women's side last year, and that is not an easy course. So if you're touching under par on 18 holes, that's impressive. Even though it wasn't done over the course of all the rounds, one round you shoot under par, that's good. That is really good. So yeah, it was a heck of a year, 24, 25. Keep looking back up at the screen here, the wrap up. It's hard to believe that we're we're done with the 24-25 campaign. A lot of memories, a lot of great moments. But to some of the things that we discussed throughout the entire fall, spring, winter sports, we referenced a little bit about the off the field stuff, the away from the mat, the court. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into that with our departmental updates and recap. Shall we?
We shall.
We shall.
Yeah, let's do it. There's a lot of numbers to unpack, but the biggest number I think that resonated with me was for the first time since 2002, all 16 teams earned a GPA of 3.0 or higher. I think that's a big.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a big one, I think. But
Really good. It's not because it's not emphasized enough about they're not athletic students, but they're student athletes. And a lot of people come in and they get all flowery like I'm a Division I athlete, and you come in here with all this gear and stuff like that, but you gotta show up to class.
Mhm.
You gotta maintain a GPA to be able to get to travel and get these things where you're also getting on the all MAC academic
Right.
honors and stuff of that nature. So for all the coaches and all the programs to emphasize that and to have that with the to complement it with 3.0 or higher GPA says a lot about this.
Yeah, I would like to add to that the myth about student athletes broadly is that they're shepherded into easier majors, or they're not doing things that are as intellectually challenging. And I don't know about other places. That's actually never been the case in any of the places I've worked in my career. But particularly here, we have student athletes in every college on campus. And there may be a few departments that our student athletes are naturally drawn to based on their interests or what have you. We do have a lot in the College of Business, for example. But we have students in every college. We have graduate students. We have students who are undergrads who are taking additional classwork in order to get ready for other certificates or prepare for more strenuous medical school or graduate programs. And so, what I love about our environment is every student athlete you meet on our campus has both athletic and academic goals. And these outcomes are reflective of that. Today, we're also recording in the Silk Center, which has been an important addition to our portfolio. It's quiet now because it's summertime, but it's hopping during the week, and it's a place where not only our students can study and take advantage of the efficiency of the location, but they can do group work, which Tanai will tell you is really important as part of nearly every major here on campus. That we have experiential opportunities that are coordinated out of this space. It's a space where our student athletes can come together and lead. They do a lot of programming out of this space as well. And so it's, I think, really fitting that we sit here in this room today and talk about this. And our GSR numbers, it's our graduation success rate, and our APR numbers are really strong as well. But I think the one that we've added to the list is this 16 teams earning at least a 3.0 or higher.
Huge deal. And, recently we had 2 student athletes earn the Medal of Excellence Award in the Mid-American Conference. Miles Fleming, football, Kelsey Harris, cross country, track and field. They were recognized. Tanai, would you like to read the Medal of Excellence requirements just to shout out how big time these awards are?
Let me take this from
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
They participated at the varsity level in a conference-sponsored sport. They must maintain a minimum of 3.5 cumulative GPA, and they demonstrated excellence in athletics, leadership, and service.
It's a lot to unpack, but it's
Let me just
really cool.
take a quick 20-second timeout. Tanaya, you are not eligible for this question.
Uh-oh.
Schulze, as an undergraduate student, how would you have stacked up against those criteria?
Probably not great. Okay.
Your community service and leadership?
Yeah, probably not the best. I was a decent student.
Yeah,
but
I can see that.
yeah, I was a decent.
You're a smart
student.
guy. I can see that. Now, if there had been a social element to that,
I would have been the Medal of Excellence
for
4
sure,
years,
for
probably.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you hear what these young adults are accomplishing at a very young age relative to their hopefully long lifespan, and it does make you sort of question, like, what did I do when I was an undergrad? I mean, I got decent grades. I graduated. I made good use of that time, but these awardees have done hours and hours and hours of community service and often led the initiatives. Miles has completed his undergraduate degree. He's preparing to go. He would like to stay at Ohio and go to medical school here. And so he's layering additional science classes this year in order to prepare for that and studying for MCATs. Kelsey also very accomplished. And so the point I'm just trying to make is, like, they're all really stellar young people. And then, above that, there's this layer of highly, highly efficient and impactful contribution to our communities that is pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even started to discuss the hours and hours and hours they put into their sports.
Right. Early morning workouts.
Right.
If I got to class on time, that was a good day. But Tanaya, like, I didn't have to go work out at 6 or 7 and then sit in class and think about how much my body hurt and how hungry I was or whatever, and then go through an entire day and then sometimes go back to practice again and then figure out how to do
I miss it,
my
though.
community service. Do you miss it?
Yeah, I miss the fact that you got practice, you got to do that, and then you just there's just like this motivation, like, you have to continue, because without school, you're not going to be able to continue that practice and that that drive.
But you also, I think, what I often hear from athletes is there's just not extra time.
Yeah.
So you've got to stay on that schedule, or else it's going to get you. And so that goes away when you're a graduate.
You gotta
motivate yourself.
Yeah. You gotta be okay to just sacrifice, and the bigger picture at the end of the day. So,
well, I think that's sacrifice is a word that separates. I mean, other than amazing Division I talents that somebody like me never had, but I mean, I think the sacrifice that these student athletes make are what separates them from others. And that's, we joke about my 4 years of college at Ohio University, and sacrifice was not a word that I would describe as using in any capacity. But I mean, seriously, that's what separates. That's what makes them so great.
Yeah. And then we were also recognized for the MAC Institutional Sportsmanship Award as well. It was a good seeing some of the photos from Cleveland recently. That was awesome, but also just like how much that means to the student athletes, not only participating in their sports like we've talked about. So I guess before we tie a bow on 2024, 2025, our favorite moments from the seasons that unfolded, you can only pick one. Friends here, only one, but it was a memorable 2024, 2025, and gosh, there are a lot of great moments that we highlighted already, but what was our favorite moment? Who wants to start?
I think you should.
Me? Okay.
Unless you don't want to start.
I'll start. I guess I'll just start. So my favorite moment is without a doubt swimming and diving NCAA championships in Federal Way, Washington, about 30 miles south of Seattle. And Zita Zoki making history was truly incredible. To be standing like 10 feet away from the coaching staff, Mason and his staff, while Zita was swimming that 100 freestyle final, where she ultimately finished 11th and had the time of 47.62. It was breathtaking. But then you talked about earlier, Julie, about like qualifying for finals. So I do want to back up and have that vivid moment of when Zita qualified for finals in the 100 freestyle. That was crazy, seeing Mason look up at the board and realize like she's racing tonight. She's racing in finals. Like that was
drama of that
crazy
moment. Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
I think that happens more in swimming too, because they're in the pool. It's harder to see. It sometimes happens in track. In fact, I think we had one of those races actually with one of our competitors when everyone was looking at the board to see, exactly where she finished. But In swimming, it happens, at least for me, a lot more. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but it's like splashing everywhere and they're all coming in those sprint races. And then everyone looks up at the board and there's this pause and it's not even half a second, but it just, the whole world is sitting there. And I saw video of that reaction and that's, it's like, you know, it's very emotional.
It was really emotional. And Zita handled it like a pro. She was just like, she was excited, but she also was like, all right, I got a race tonight. Let's go.
Focused and relaxed.
Yeah. So that's got to be mine. Zita Zoki becoming the first All-American at Ohio in women's swimming in 25 years and highest finish, 11th overall by a swimmer since 1995. That's history. So
that's a good one.
What we got? Who's next?
Tanaya should go next.
You surf, I do turf, I guess.
What you got? You had that planned.
No, I did.
Good one.
She started talking about track and field and swimming together.
All right. What you got?
Track and field, watching, I'm biased, but track and field and just seeing the hosting process as a track athlete, you want to be a part of a hosting track meet. And just to see how professional Ohio was with everything and to hear fans and to hear parents and other staff that wasn't a part of Ohio, the MC talking to us about how we held ourselves at such a high level with how we hosted and hearing officials. I was talking to some officials about it that were USA track. They were like, this is just like, we just kept going and we were always on time. But then to just look specifically at Ohio, the track and field program, it was just phenomenal to see that at OU, at conference, is when they did exactly what they wanted to do. Talking to Coach Mo, the sprints, hurdles, jumps coach, he was talking about that. There were so many times where, you know, there were just expectations that were, you know, talked about. But it's up to the athletes if they wanted to really get to that. And seeing those athletes, some of them exerted themselves so much in the prelims that it shocked themselves. And then when they got to finals, it was just like, you made podium. Obviously, that's not exactly what you want to hear all the time. But in the grand scheme of things, that's exactly how it should be for Ohio. And yeah, it was cool. As you know, I was a granny last year for Ohio track and field. And they still call me granny still, but it was cool and, you know, made me a little teary eyed to see all those witnesses like Gracie Smith, seeing how that, like you said, looking up and seeing that you are actually on podium and knowing the hard work that all these athletes go through. It's a tough season. It's a long season. And that's with every sport though, but definitely watching this from an alumni and now working was really cool to feel and see.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, Mike Schulze.
I'm taking the
you're
easy
taking
one.
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm going to jump in. Do you
Okay.
mind if I
No,
jump
of
in?
course.
Because I feel like you and I will have the same one. And
Yep.
so
You got it.
I'm going to take football. I mean, it's just, there was a lot of history in a lot of categories this year again. And we had great events at home and great attendance, you know, across sports. We broke our attendance record in volleyball. There are a lot of great things that have happened in our venues here, but that day in Detroit was it. And Schulze mentioned this earlier, but just the amplification from that moment and, you know, being able to be a small part of this alumni base and fan base and the history and all these former players and all of the people who really were united in that day. And, you know, we have folks on the field after the game and, you know, lots of tears and lots of celebration and lots of, you know, release of a lot of pent up stuff. But it was just great to be able to be here and be with this program at the time when that happened, because we were so close for so many years. And then it also is like the cherry on top to be your rival, and the build up to the game and the extra storyline that rivalry provided to our particular conference game.
Yeah.
And the way the national media picked that up, I think shows the respect they have for both of our programs. And, you know, some of that was work that we generated in that week and the MAC generated in that week. But, you know, you hear from people all over the country. And I think it was a great representation of things that are still really good about college football. And right now we have a lot of fans who are reading stories that are driven more by the business of college sports. And in some cases, they're losing maybe the feelings they've had about not necessarily following college football, because those numbers are higher than they've ever been. But you know, people have expressed a lot of feelings about where college sports are going. And it just seemed to me like our championship, the MAC championship game between two traditional rivals and programs that really brought a lot to the table on their own. But when you throw in the rivalry mix, it was a thing. And then to be the team that dominated in that game, you know, it left a mark, and it's a great rivalry. We have a lot of respect for those guys. They are reloading for this year as we are. And, you know, I'll look forward to that opportunity when it comes. But that's my memory.
Love
it's hard
that.
to beat that one.
Yeah.
It's
First
hard to beat that
ever MAC championship featuring Ohio against Miami, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you get rid of divisions and then that's the matchup.
The outcome.
Like that's just perfect.
Crazy.
I mean,
That's right.
It justifies the decision
So
to get
much.
rid of those
Yeah.
divisions.
You were arguing against it too.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. So I think my favorite memory, I'm going to piggyback off of that, is the party on College Green afterwards. It was a little bit of a stressful plan. It started in the bowels of Ford Field. We were standing outside the locker room, awkwardly pulling up Google Maps, like the Earth view, to try to figure out if it was doable at that location. And then from there, it was a little bit of a crazy drive home, and our students showed up at the exact time that they were asked to show up, and not a minute earlier. So we were a little worried that the Ohio University, I was a little worried that the Ohio University students.
You can say it. I was too.
Yeah.
I was.
We were a little worried, but they showed up in huge numbers. They celebrated our team. They celebrated our university. They celebrated our president. They celebrated everybody. They were rowdy in a good way. And it really, to me, showed why I chose to work in college athletics. That's why you do it. I mean, you do it for the student athletes as well, but to have the university, the community back your program like that.
That's their memory.
Yes.
Yeah, we talk a lot about our job is not only to support our students who are competing and the coaches, but also our community and our broader student body and the university, and create these opportunities for them to have these memorable experiences that they will talk about down the road at homecoming or whenever they in their group chat reconnect with their roommates, what have you. And I have to give you guys credit because you believed in a vision and thought it was going to happen. There were a few nervous moments, but it did. And those students will mostly remember those moments and will talk about them for forever. And what was most important to me was what you guys accomplished. And that was that team came back through in the buses, and there were people there yelling and cheering for them and chanting for them. And then when they pulled back, around the backside and came out to the front of Cutler, and there, at that point, everyone was whipped into a frenzy, probably because you had them running all over the green. But you created that moment for everyone, and that's super special. And I can see why it's your favorite moment.
It was a blast. It was a blast. And then the buses drove down Court Street afterwards.
Yeah.
And because the bus is parked by the library, so the football team had a little bit of a walk back that gave our student base enough time to go back to Court Street. So then they got one more drive down, and they were laying on the horn. And
all right, that's it for our end of the year recap. I'm speechless after just unpacking all of 2024, 2025. It was just a lot of great memories, great moments. As we talked about just recently, our favorite moments, they're going to resonate for forever. And with the Athens community and with Ohio University and Ohio University Athletics. So here's a cheers to 2024, 2025. Thank you all for coming on to share the great memories. And thanks to our audience as well. Really appreciate you all and your support throughout the 2024, 2025 season. We can't wait for 2025, 2026. So for Tanaya Stevens, Mike Schulze, Julie Cromer, my name is Sam Hyman. Thanks for watching, and go Bobcats.